Hey, Brian, welcome to World Building Secrets.
Hello, thank you.
It's great to have you. For those that do not know, Brian Patience is our primary visual animator. Any videos you see, any really awesome animations you see, that's the man behind the scenes. So it's really awesome to have you on so we can really talk about, how that comes to be. And first of all, how did you get your start in gaming? Where did it all really begin for you?
I started at Sony back when MMOs were kind of fairly new. But got started. I was always kind of into art. In school, I would say I was one of the dumb kids that didn't pay much attention in class and was always drawing because I found that more interesting. And
The creative kind.
yeah. And then from there, I started my own business as an airbrush artist, doing wall murals, and eventually went to work for somebody doing jet skis and helmets, and did a lot of pro supercross rider helmets, did a lot of celebrity type projects that a guy named Jeff Dunham, who's like a puppet guy. I painted his helicopter for him.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of fun doing a lot of graphics and stuff. And for that. And then I noticed my boss was pretty slow when I would ask him questions. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Back then they had like all the paints that are now outlawed were being used, and like acrylic urethanes and stuff. So it was, I was afraid that I was going to end up like him, and decided that I should probably go to school or something. So I ended up not long after that jumping into college, and got really interested in 3D animation. That was kind of the thing that drew me into going to school. And I was still while I was going to college, I pretty much was still airbrushing and continued to do that, and was doing a lot, just kept on growing with that, and almost took that path, but decided to stay on course and learn motion graphics and 3D animation and design, and got out of college and ended up going to work for an agency that a buddy of mine that I went to school with worked at. He was actually working there while he was in college and brought me over afterwards. Actually, before that, I went to work for a startup company, and it was kind of fun because already being involved in kind of action sports stuff, they did a lot of. They tried to make an online. Actually, not. It was before online. It was. They tried to make a CD that was.
That sounds so. It's like before online.
Yeah, now I'm really dating myself. It was. They tried to make that's when these little tiny little CDs came out. Little discs came out, and they were like, the company had an idea of taking those and putting those in a magazine form. So you put them in your computer, and it's kind of an interactive magazine. And
that's cool.
The guy that started it was a ex-pro skateboarder, and he knew a lot of people in the industry, so he decided to do a quarterly magazine focusing on snowboarding, skateboarding, wakeboarding, and surfing. So they brought me on there as an editor to help create and a lot of content on there. So that was a really fun project too, because I got to work really closely with a lot of pros, and Tony Hawk was always hanging out in the office, and we had a giant. My office was underneath a giant vert ramp, so during the day people will come out and go out there and skateboard. In fact, they did the first filming of a pro skater. Tony Hawk Pro Skater was on the vert ramp, was all captured there with all the motion capture was done there, which was kind of fun.
Did you get to witness that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
So it was just a constant inflow of people, like all these different pro people coming in and out of the office, talking to them, interviewing them, going out on shoots with them. I was never really good at any of those. sports. So I would go out and attempt to do some of the filming, but I let the pros kind of do that, and I just took the footage. So, but yeah, that was kind of where I got my first step or first attempt to like get into editing and motion graphics, and then I went to an ad agency from there, where worked there for about 8 years.
Wow.
Doing a ton of like real estate type development projects, naming of like, we actually worked on a project where we named the ballpark in San Diego, which is called Petco Park. And it's at first it was, we were going through tons of names and building these presentations and going to these different meetings and pitches with the companies that hired us to make these presentations. And we actually, before we were doing it, there was like a lot of cool ones, like beer ones and stuff that were like, oh, okay, this would be kind of fun. Makes sense. And then we did it. They told us, okay, next one is Petco. I'm like, what? That sounds so ridiculous. Why would you name a ballpark Petco? Like,
it's random.
And so we did a lot of video production to support that, to help with the pitch, and got like costumes of animals and stuff running around waving to people at what used to be Jack Murphy Stadium during events and stuff. So kind of staged it so it would look like what the experience would be like at Petco Park.
Right.
And then they ended up, going with that, which is kind of ridiculous, but it worked out.
But it worked out. It's awesome.
Yeah. And from there, I had a good friend that worked there that left and went to Sony as an intern. And then he told me that they were looking for someone to do video editing and run their video department. And I aggressively fought for that. I was just bothering them all the time. I found out who was hiring, who's the hiring manager, and I just bugged the heck out of them until they got annoyed by me. And finally got in there for an interview and worked out.
What was so exciting that made you? What was so exciting about it that made you fight for it so much?
Video games was just exciting to me. I was doing development projects, fun interactive development projects, but they're more corporate. They were just, there's no glamour in there, where the video game industry obviously had so much more glamour. It was just, that's more in line where I wanted to be. I was always kind of obsessed with the 3D world and wanted to be involved with that, and found myself not there yet. So the opportunity to jump in and work at Sony and get more knowledge on video games in general was like amazing. That was like the dream job for most, and it was kind of fun to be able to go brag and say, hey, I work at Sony, and tell my friend that, and I was still fairly young at that point. Yeah, that was my first attempt in the game industry.
That's incredible. I mean, I didn't even know that your story rooted back to so far as starting with sports and then actually developed, like, we wouldn't even start as a video editor at first, which is, I had no idea. How was there any kind of like animation or some kind of piece of content that you watched and you were like, wow, this is actually, you weren't probably aware of what you could do with video editing and 3D animation and motivated you to get into it? Or do you think it was maybe a little bit more of a like progressive thing with, you witnessed so many different amazing things happening? What do you think?
It was definitely just watching where everything was going. This was early before YouTube and everything, so it was not, there's not a lot of content out there to really explore. It was pretty much watching movies. MTV was big back then, and actually played music videos, so that was a lot of the inspiration and ideas and new kind of innovation with 3D and animation that's where it was at. And it was just visually stimulating. And while you're watching a music video to see how crazy and how weird those things would get.
Yeah, definitely.
I think kind of piqued my interest. And then just seeing where video games were going, how they were getting more and more detailed and more realistic, and just having an understanding that we're still not there yet, but we're going to be at a point where you're not going to be able to tell. I mean, we're close. We're so close to not being able to tell what's real and what's not. But it's not far. I
Yeah.
think I'll still be around for that.
Yeah. But the development is actually really incredible. If you look at some old games from, 80s, 90s, and you get to really see how much it's progressed. It's insane to even think about it. And I'm also really curious where it's going to go. Where were you working at, and what were you working on before you joined the Universe, before you became a part of us?
Before the Universe, I was working for a mobile game company called Redemption Games that got bought out by a bigger company called AppLovin, which was a kind of a juggernaut marketing company that just started buying up smaller mobile game companies, and then decided that they didn't want to be involved in mobile game companies, so they sold them all off. So I've always kind of, through the years, just because the game industry changes and moves so much, I mean, you kind of have to, you get a game out there and you kind of wait and see what happens. And sometimes it does well, sometimes it doesn't. So I tend to bounce around from different companies, and have always kept good connections with people and networking with people in a way where there's somebody's always reaching out to me to ask me for help with either their own game project or working with the company they're at now.
Sure.
So I felt like for the last 10 years, I've been doing a little bit of both, freelance and working for
Balance between
big companies. So I felt like it's something I had to do and I enjoy doing. I mean, it really doesn't let me have much free time, but it's kind of fun to stay in. Especially like when I was in the mobile side, I missed console and PC a lot. So I still got to do a lot of freelance stuff with more indie style companies that are working in console and PC. So it allowed me to just stay up to date with all the different.
I think that's so great. As a creator and as a creative, I think having that freedom of being able to constantly challenge yourself but not limit to one thing is super important. Something that a lot of people, struggle to do because they're limited to one project, or they can only stay within one and don't really have, or don't even have the time, right? Like you said, it's extremely time consuming. You kind of give up all your free time to be able to do all these different things. Have you had a favorite project that you've worked on? Something that you think has either one changed the game for you, but maybe even changed the game for the gaming industry as a whole?
There's a few of them. One that I think was pretty awesome and cool to work on was a game it was an MMO game called DC Universe Online.
Okay.
And it was basically taking, the DC world. You can kind of see the posters behind me. That was
sick.
The signed poster, and that's one that was created to help market the game. But it was awesome to be able to work with all the Superman, Batman, all these different things in one game. And they literally just took every DC character and put them in this one game, and then built, because it was an MMO, it had to be a big open world. So they had this giant map of all the districts in the DC world, which I don't think they've ever did at that time in any Superman or DC type game. They never really expanded the world that big to show like where, like Star Labs and the Batcave and where Metropolis and all the different locations are in the game, and how far away they are from each other. So it was kind of cool and unique to be able to have this giant open world that you're fighting all these bad guys and having these different things go on that at the same time you're running around MMO as a superhero yourself. It was I think the funnest part about that game was I got to meet a lot of interesting people. Jim Lee, who's a famous comic book artist, he also lives in San Diego, and the game was when I was at Sony, it was being created out in our Austin studio. So I was flying back and forth constantly, working at least once or twice a month, just working with the team out there, collecting content and helping with the marketing stuff. And Jim seemed to always be on the airplane that I was on going out to Austin at the same time. So it was kind of cool when you're in the airport walking just walking over to the gate waiting, and Jim's like, "Hey, Brian," and he just waves you down, and
That's so cool. That's
hang out and talk with Jim Lee while you're waiting for the plane.
Yeah, I'm sure those were some probably very interesting conversations that you can get into when that happens.
And then I got to do a lot of interviews with voiceover talents like the late Christopher Lee. He was very fun and interesting to interview and talk with. He did the voice of some of the characters in our game. And then Kevin Conroy, who is well known as being the voice of Batman in a lot of different animated series. And then Mark Hamill, who plays the Joker iconically in the DC world. Got to do some interviews and meet him, and then got to work with Tim Miller, who was the director of Deadpool, who also owned a studio called Blur, where we created a really cool, like high-end cinematic to support the launch of the game, and it was pretty awesome. It's still, I think, referenced a lot now as like the first time DC ever got really edgy and like literally destroyed main characters. Like Superman got his ass kicked, and all these guys were getting their ass kicked, and they were getting destroyed, and it was just amazing to see that, because you never really saw that anywhere else. Like in the comics you do, but like in live action, like that didn't happen. Like the Super Friends never destroyed Superman and Super Friends, like cartoon series or anything.
Yeah.
So it was
doing something
cool
groundbreaking, right?
Yeah, it was kind of cool to see this like realistic like battles going on and people getting messed up and destroyed. So that was
that's gaming for you. What do you look for?
Oh, that's it. That was just gonna kind of wrap up. It was an awesome time. It was fun.
Definitely. I mean, do you think that having those personal connections and being able to, I guess, interact with people and witness things that are developing and are kind of unknown to you in a way, right? Like there's things you haven't seen before or people haven't seen before. Do you think that that's something that you really look for before you agree to work on a project, something that is going to basically take you out of your comfort zone and you're going to be able to work on something unique with people that really interest you? Or do you maybe focus more on the individual things that you'd actually be able to work on as an animator?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the new coolness is what I'm always excited about. I love to like what's new, what's next. And, I consider myself very techy in my field. And I know that's something that keeps me going and keeps me excited about what I do, is just staying on top of what's going on. So same with games, like I'm always excited to see what's new and innovative in the gaming world and what's going to be next. And it's hard to tell. Nobody really knows what's going to be next. Really. We're attempting a lot of things right now. I think everybody is, and trying to figure out what's next.
Definitely,
but it's exciting. It's an amazing time to like be embedded in the gaming industry, to see where we actually end up, because there's a lot of uncertainties. There's a lot of twists and turns. I mean, the VR and how it's not even taken off yet. And like, there's potential somewhere. I think it will, but
someone's got to do it.
Right now, somebody's going to do it.
Yeah,
and it's just kind of crazy it's crazy and fun to be in the trenches trying to figure that out with everybody else.
Yeah. So speaking of which, what was your first impression of the Universe when you were first approached about it?
Being in just coming straight off of mobile gaming, I was a little confused.
Oh, for sure.
I was like, what are we doing here? I wasn't necessarily really educated on NFTs and how they work, and that took me a little time to kind of understand that world and what's going on with NFTs. And
I think there were a few people, it wasn't, I mean, I know it was also me, like I knew a little bit about it, but gaming was even newer to me. And ironically, I knew it was really hard to at first kind of figure out you're trying to do something so groundbreaking here, and trying to also catch up before you can actually do something groundbreaking it's a challenge, but it's an exciting one.
Yeah. It just seems like, for me, it was trying to understand how the transfer of money to NFTs, and then from NFTs to everything else that where you're moving things around and you're purchasing things or you're investing in something, how that works and how I know it's going to change and I know it's going to get better, but it just seems like there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of steps.
There's a lot of steps. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's the exciting part because it's going to change. It's going to get better. It's going to improve. And as more and more people are going to get interested in it and excited about it, it's going to change a lot of things.
Have you worked with? Yeah, definitely. Have you worked with a lot of game developers?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So the universe. Yeah. So what do you think of the inherent issue that the universe is trying to solve within the gaming industry?
I think ownership, right? It's people want to be involved and own their characters on the game. They want to, and the unique thing about what we're doing is we're letting the community come in and have a voice and be involved in something that's new and exciting, and letting them kind of guide the way with how we move forward. And that's huge. That's have been involved in several game companies. Like you always try to listen to the community, but it's usually after the fact is when you're interested it's usually when it's too late that you're interested in what the community thinks about the game or how to improve it because you didn't really listen at the beginning. So
yeah, definitely.
I think it's smart to listen at the beginning and make sure you're dotting all your I's and getting the community what they want, because if you're not, chances are you're not going to last too long, right? Yeah,
definitely.
You got to listen to the people that are actually going to be supporting this and building the franchise and building the games, and everybody that's make sure you understand and know what they want. And that changes.
That changes, yeah. And I think me and you actually have spoken about this before, is there's definitely a notion of a little bit of discouragement, especially from gamers themselves when it comes to Web3 and when it comes to the, NFT space, and how it's difficult for them to, see the value in it when there is no game at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it all starts with gamers, right? Ultimately the goal is to provide entertainment for the gamers. And if the gamers aren't excited or interested, then there's no developers, then there's no franchises. Like
there's a demand.
Yeah. You gotta make sure you, understand what their needs and their wants. I think inherently, gamers are suspicious on NFTs. It's because it's a new path of monetization, and just like we went down the path before with loot boxes. Like loot boxes were hated when they first came out. Like everybody hated the idea of loot boxes, and now it's embraced. It's just part of everyday. A gamer's everyday life is loot boxes, right?
Yeah.
So, I think if we look at it that way, like, there's a lot of haters out there with what the industry's trying to do and change. But I think once the gamers actually slow down and listen and kind of get a better understanding, I think they'll realize that it makes sense and it's going to improve everything for them down the road. Just the security and the ownership that they're going to be able to take away with them is going to be huge compared to just leaving, being at the will of the game, the development team, and having that control of what happens to your character and what you do with that character. If you're done with it, if you want to move on, you can move on and actually possibly make a decent profit from the experience and time you put into that character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Games don't allow that.
I also think that if it's really easy for somebody to kind of look at something very surface level and have an opinion, right? Like looking at our project, being like, oh, they're in the Web3 space. That's not really something as a gamer that I right now maybe I don't understand. Maybe I don't necessarily want to be involved. But I think the shame in that is that the coolest part behind it all is that there's a really unique story. And to me, that it kind of gives you room for identity, to create an identity for yourself and then own that identity. And I've spoken to a lot of gamers, and I think that's something that a lot of them, that's why they like gaming, is because you can be somebody else. You can live in this entire different world, whether that's a representation of you, or you want to pretend, when you want to feel like you just are able to be yourself, or you are able to be somebody else. Like, it's up to you. It's your own identity. Nobody's, sometimes it's anonymous, right? Sometimes you have no idea what the person looks like, or you do. You have that choice. You have that choice of freedom to create your own identity within a game. And I think that I'm curious how you see the universe, given that it's, going to have community ownership and it's going to have multiple games, not just one. That's also really important to remember, is that it's not like we're building one massive, incredible game and that's it. The whole point is that so many different people can create so many unique games that all live within this space that has room for ownership and identity. And I'm curious what's your opinion on how, everybody kind of has different, it's really tough when a lot of people come together and have a lot of different opinions, especially game developers that, are very protective of their game, I'm sure, and will want to probably create a very unique game. How do you see that developing in the future, where there's a balance and a coherence across these games?
Yeah, I think it's going to happen one way or another, right? I mean, I think going forward, just even watching my kids and how they play, I got 3 boys that are hardcore gamers, and they're very involved in their games, and that's in fact, I think that's their closest friends are in the gaming world and not outside.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's kind of the case for a lot of people nowadays. So
yeah,
it's their livelihood. It's really it becomes their life, and they want to have great experiences in there. So I mean, the key, I think, for us is to listen to what everybody wants and let them participate and let them get involved and do things that make sense. I mean, as you're not going to get game developers involved if you don't have a way to monetize and for them to make money, because they have to be able to profit from making a game. But they're not going to profit unless a game is fun and exciting and interesting. So I think it's a great resource for all of us to just kind of to learn and grow together to really get a great and strong understanding what the community wants and how they can kind of steer the direction and help us give them exactly what is needed out there to be successful together.
Definitely. What do you think, as from a animator perspective, where do you see animation and I guess video content within gaming going in the next couple of years, or where would you like to see it go? And how do you think that, how is that give maybe a game a better chance of actually becoming better and have a better marketing? That's really what it comes down to, right? Is how the game is marketed, and I think video content overall is going to become the future of any kind of video marketing, gaming marketing. How do you see that developing? Where do you see it going? And do you ever see VR/AR coming into that in, like, let's say promotional videos or I guess experiences in that sense?
As far as it's almost impossible to create a video right now with marketing in VR until we actually have VR, it'll be interesting when that actually, if there's a time in the future where everybody has glasses on, and then that's going to be a whole new innovation for people like me that edit and create videos. Is how do you create those VR videos? Because those are going to
it's going to be tough.
Right now, it's like the hard part from a marketing perspective is when you do have a VR games, how do you show the audience this is VR? And you almost have to you have to do a lot of
how do you replicate it?
Fake it. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds and how you can actually what evolves from that when we start adapting to VR.
But I think that that's a really good point because one, it's the matter of access, but it's also a matter of how well can it actually communicate what it's meant to communicate, right? Which is the experience of that game. Are you going to be able to watch that and feel like you are in that VR? Like, is it going to sell it? Are you going to watch that video and want to go and actually participate or purchase that game or purchase the goggles? That's really, it's a really good point. And I think that even just coming back to like today, when you, for example, when you create videos, do you keep that in mind? Is like, how do you, when you choose scenes, for example, when you're creating a Ryu Danger Room and you choose sounds and you choose animations and you choose the particular scenes and what Ryu does, like, what's your thought process behind that when you're trying to envision who's going to be seeing it?
It's definitely changed over the years because the way we market and we draw people in has changed because people used to watch a lot more long form videos and there used to not be as much out there and then even commercials, like I've done a lot of commercial spots in the past and nobody watches really TV that much. So at least people will play games, so you're not marketing there. And the internet is getting saturated like crazy more and more every day. So my key is always put the best stuff first. You want to keep the tension, and if you're not able to keep the tension right out of the gate, then people are going to click away. I mean, it makes it really tough for telling a story and kind of getting a longer drawn out message. But you got to try to do it within 15 seconds or less. I mean, most coming from a mobile game industry, which is saturated with mobile UA ads, I mean, you have to get people's attention within the first 5 seconds or less, and because they're just moving, they're just scrolling.
That's so incredible to think about how short people's attention span has actually become over the past few years. Especially, it's like crystal clear to I think any industry, but specifically entertainment, with TikTok. That's been huge because. Like I'm sometimes on it and I find myself just like skipping through hundreds of videos and it takes me a second to know whether I want to watch it or not. And it's interesting because I'm confident that I do, but then there's certain videos. There was a moment where I think my friend of mine showed me a video and I was like, wait, I saw that, but I remembered that I skipped through it. But when she actually showed me the full thing, I was like, why did I skip through that? Like that's an interesting, it's like what really captivates people to actually watch something and like, how do you crack that code?
Yeah, that's a tough one that I think people in my industry are still trying to figure out. It's because it's just getting shorter and shorter. I mean, you have to shock people. Even in the mobile side, when I was doing that, like some of the most successful videos for marketing a mobile game were videos that I created that have nothing to do with the game.
Really? It speaks for itself. I mean.
Which doesn't make any sense, but I would, for instance, like I was working on a puzzle game just based on sweets, just a very simple, fun, like puzzle, like a match 3 puzzle game. And they have all these cute little characters like bunnies and all these things that are in this world and they're building this world. So there's like kind of a little story where you're solving the puzzles and stuff. You get points to go build things. And nobody wanted to see those characters for some reason. Like anytime I would put one of these little characters in the video, it would get hardly any views. So we test them. We do like the same video with the character, same without, and the one without just got better views. I'm like, so okay, nobody wants to see the cute little characters. That's weird. But
that's ironic.
Found out that as long as we didn't have a lot of cakes in the game, but for some reason, anytime we showed a cake in a video, that did so much better than without a cake. So we ended up
just like a dessert, like a cake, physical.
Yeah, just like cake, just cake. Yeah, and it didn't matter what kind of cake, just cake.
That's so interesting. I mean, you'd think cute little animals would also be quite appealing to people, but no, cake is.
Cake, yeah.
That's actually so funny. But it'd be interesting to like dissect that from like a strategy and marketing perspective of like why did the cake work and the actual, I guess, like brand token, right? The bunnies and the little or cute little, I'm not familiar with the game, but cute little animals. You think that's who you'd want to, like, who would be the most appealing, right? Because that's like why you play. you're them, right? Is that what the game would be like? Like you would be the little animal and you'd be building all these different
you're
things?
kind of advancing the story of these animals in their world. And you're like,
Yeah.
their world is destroyed by like trauma or something in the world. And they all have these little bakeries and donut shops and all these different sweet things in the world. And your job is to solve the puzzles and help them rebuild this world and bring it back to life.
That's so interesting.
As you're kind of rebuilding the world, more and more hamsters, like the regular people just run around everywhere with little hamsters.
Yeah.
Cute little hamsters. And they, they go in, they eat all the sweets and everything and buy stuff. But they
still wanted the cake.
They still want the cake. It's just,
That's
it's very strange. Like it's almost impossible in the mobile game industry for UA videos to kind of understand what's going to work, what's not, and it just takes an insane amount of testing. Like
trial and error.
One game I mentioned, I think me and my team created well over 1,000 videos for that game, just to help try to figure out what works and what doesn't. And it took a long time for us to figure out the cake thing. And it just seemed like after that, everything we did with cakes just seemed like
it just worked. People love cake. People love cake. Well, do you think that videos are going to be the primary piece of content in the future? Like, are they going to overrule photos, long form, short form content, text? Do you think videos will be the future?
They already do, right? Like if you're scrolling, the chances are if something's moving and some action is happening in your face, is you're going to stop compared to just a static of something. So I think motion is pretty important when it comes to marketing and social. You just need to get that extra movement that gets the attention of people. Where static, you're not going to
get the same thing.
Depending on the image, but chances are if you test the image that works well versus that same image that's animated, the one that's animated is going to, even if it's small, like particles, clouds, slight movement of characters or anything, it's going to perform a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. I think not only is it able to really showcase a lot more than I guess just a static image can, again, depending on the image, but I think it also represents a little bit more from an complete outsider's perspective is almost like effort, like that they're creating a really high quality video, especially in the gaming world. That doesn't just happen overnight. Like it's not like you take a TikTok in 5 minutes and that's what you do. Like that's not what happens. So I think that that's something that people appreciate more and translates better. Especially when you're trying to communicate like a really high quality product, like even our Danger Room, for example, like that. We could show 1 million photos of Ryu in the Danger Room, but seeing him actually jump and enter and move around and interact with it allows you to feel like, oh, I'm going to be able to do that and probably better because this is only the beginning, right? For sure.
Yeah, people definitely want to see Ryu moving, right? They want to see him jump. They want to see him in action. And I think the Danger Room is a perfect spot for people to get an idea of what it's going to happen with Ryu when he gets in the game, because that's what we get. That's what we're creating for. That's what he's made for. He's made for a game. So you want to see how agile he is. You want to see how he handles weapons. You want to see what he does in different situations. Yeah. And I think the Danger Room is a cool place to do that, where you can do the wall crawling and everything. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
When I put together videos for the Danger Room, one thing I had that I always keep in mind is what is the coolest moves that Ryu is doing that I think, and then back to back like action stuff. Just so that's what when I'm putting together a video of Ryu or for the Danger Room, that's kind of what I have in mind. Is I want to pull out the coolest stuff, move that to the front, and make sure that's getting the attention first, because that's where the focus is, right? That's where the draw is. And usually if you can get somebody to stop for a few seconds, they're going to finish. More likely they're going to finish the video, right?
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Thank you so much. I like to always close off every one of my interviews with kind of, I guess, asking what's your world building secret, but I'm going to phrase it in a little bit of a different context for you. This is a community owned space. And I think a lot of what we can't wait to see / want to see and want to also showcase to people and let them know is that you can create your own content. And there's a lot of people that have been saying that they love animations. They want to get into it. And my previous episode with Kevin kind of touched upon that, is how he kind of just found some people that were good at it. But if you were somebody in the community that is really interested in animation, let's say watched that Danger Room and was like, wow, this is incredible. I want to be able to do something similar with my own Ryu, right? Because I own one. Do you have any advice for them? And like, for example, where would they get started? Where would you start if you don't really know much about it? What would you do?
I think taking a look at some of the community content we have out there and utilizing that and creating cool stuff with that and awareness with that and coming up with your own ideas and style and looks and just running with it. If take Ryu and put them in fun, interesting positions and animate them, do different things with them. I think just like we do with getting awareness, do the same thing. Kind of get involved with and share ideas with how you see the characters being involved in the world. Create interesting events or situations for Ryu that kind of tie in, and then before you know it, you're really heavily involved with the universe and drawn in and participating with everything else that's going on.
Totally. Is there a particular studio or I guess software that you recommend for beginners to kind of begin learning before they get into anything that's more pro?
I think in general, everybody should know Photoshop. I think that's kind of a Photoshop and Illustrator to me they've always been around and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think those are the two things as far as design that I feel like you need to have experience with. There's bazillion tutorials out there for it, and you can go down a rabbit hole in both those software, but just get to understand the basics. I mean, try learning how to crop out characters and do like simple things. Give yourself some tasks, give yourself some ideas that you want to try to figure out how to do it, and look it up on YouTube, and somebody has definitely got an answer for you.
For sure.
Next step is, I think, once you have Photoshop and Illustrator, or Illustrator is not a necessity, but it's good for vector stuff. At least once you have Photoshop down, that's when you can start, I think, exploring After Effects, because that's kind of the standard out there. There's others out there. Hollywood uses a lot of different stuff, but it's kind of the standard for 2D animation is After Effects. So After Effects can also be very intimidating and
it can all be intimidating. Yeah.
I've been using After Effects since I think version 2 came out.
Oh wow.
I mean, so it's I've been using Photoshop since I feel like it just started when they just first came out.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I have a lot of years with both those applications, seeing how they've grown and changed, and you just got to get obsessed with. If it's something you really want to do and you really want to go down that path, you have to get obsessed with it. You have to dive in.
Dedicate the time.
And take the time to just learn it and educate yourself, and especially in this online world we live in now, like there's so much information out there. There's no reason you can't learn this stuff.
So much information. Yeah. So much information.
Back when I started learning this, there was no YouTube, no video, no online video courses or anything for learning stuff. So you had to go to school. But nowadays, like for doing the creative stuff, I don't feel like there's a reason. Unless you're really struggling to pay attention. There's not a reason to go to school and learn the stuff, because everything is out there on the internet.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brian. It was a pleasure talking to you.